Equality means that we as human beings have the right to freedom to do whatever we really want to do. For me, there is nobody who oversees me but my creator, the divine energy that I acknowledge. So even laws don't really, they're just laws made by man. And so equality is the right, I believe, to do whatever you want to do without it being affected by socioeconomic reasons, race, religion, creed, ethnicity, any of those things. You should have the right to do whatever you want to do. But with the same token of understanding guidelines and laws, But as far as human freedoms, we all were brought here the same and we all leave the same. At the end, we begin equal and we leave equal. All of the other stuff is what we create,
Personally, that's interesting because it's like automatically you jump to what is a dictionary definition or what does it mean sort of legally under the law, and I think that for me it's kind of a meeting of those things. It's how do we stand by the letter of the law, and then how does that translate to real life? What does that mean in reality for people? We know that our laws and our systems are in place in a way that is only framed and supported and acted out in our communities and the place that we live. So equality for me is an intersection at the roads of what does it mean to have access to the same systems of care, of the same access of opportunity, and what does that mean in real life? Does it mean that whatever identity that you have in your intersecting identities, how do those play out in your ability to move through the world, to interact in the world, to make choices, to live, to be in relationship with other people, and to thrive?
That everybody's given a fair shot, that everybody has the same opportunities, that nobody is treated any differently just because they may not believe the same things you do, they may not look the same that you do, they may not, like the same things you do. Like, we're not here to judge each other, we're here to all be human beings and exist, equally on the planet together, because we're all stuck on it together, we might as well enjoy it.
Definition of equality is, you got the equal in there. And essentially equality for me is, we should all have equal rights. You know what I'm saying? It shouldn't be just because this race or just because you're a male, you're a woman, certain age, certain status, you have a certain job or whatever it is, you make a certain amount of money. Equality is, you want to come into the diner, we can all get a burger and fries and water. We can all have the same rights, the same access to doctors, the same access to the lawyers, the same access to the nurses. It doesn't matter your status, it doesn't matter your age, it doesn't matter your race. That's what equality means for me. We all have that fair share. We all have that same measuring stick. There's no difference. We all have the same opportunity.
Equality is vast. In the relevant context, I'd say we're talking about women's rights being considered human rights. The fact that women's rights are separate from men's rights is disgusting, always has been. And the fact that we haven't merged the two entirely yet is an enormous problem. Equality is an ideal, actually, now that I think about it, because equality references the idea of an equation. And whereas real life is not math, we can always be looking at one side and the other side and trying to balance them, even though they may never be 100% balanced in every single person's eyes. We can look as a democratic republic at what is on one side, what is on the other side, men's rights versus women's rights, until they are equal. That's what continuing to move in the direction of balancing them, I think is equality.
1, 2, 3. I got a little man in my...
Obviously, man, when I first saw the news in the headlines and discovered it and read it, I was blown away. I remember, seeing the news and, it was going to come out. And then once I saw the ruling, I'm like, that don't seem like that's a good ruling, man. I just felt, for women, in particular, of course, women in regards to, them basically just, taking the rights away from women in regards to what they can do with their body. And it's just like, of course, we think about the generations before us, you know what I'm saying? Even my generation being a millennial, but then you got to think about the generations that's coming after me, and it's just devastating, man. It's crazy. Still can't quite frankly still get into like the realization of it. Still kind of hard to process it. But I feel like it's definitely something that, we just can't just let be. It's not just something that we can just sit on and just let happen. So I'm in strong support in regards to women's rights, and that's their body. And I just don't really think as a male or anybody should really have to say so. But what, the women should do with their own body. If they don't think they're not, fit, or at that point in time, they don't think they want to have the baby, then they should be able to be like, okay, now I get it from the standpoint, you don't want to kill the baby, and some people may argue that too. But you gotta think about it, and I feel like at the end of the day, the woman should have the right to make that choice.
For me as a Caribbean American, Muslim, Christian male, I grew up with a lot of religious guidance. Half of my family's Muslim, half is Christian. I began in Christianity and then went to Islam and then chose spirituality where I am now, so I'm not about religion. But with that being said, I've been taught that, that was kind of the wrong thing to do, right? But, realizing like that's just another human being telling another human being what you can do or with or without your body. I can't make that judgment on you, And so as I've grown older and I've moved away from religion, I totally believe you have the right to do whatever you want with your body, whether somebody agrees upon with it spiritually, religiously or not. Like just because your Bible says that it shouldn't do it or your Quran says that, I may not believe in the Bible or the Quran. So they can't supersede how I feel. I was brought here on this earth just like you. So it goes back down to that. Like you have the right to do whatever you want with your own body as long as you're not bringing anybody else and putting anybody else in harm's way.
Why the emotional level? I think that knowing in advance, of course, that this was happening, I was very surprised at the emotional impact that I woke up with, personally, just feeling like a person who no longer could partake in equality in this country. And it really brought to light, and of course people in different groups always forever have been saying this in many different ways that is the case, and I know that on an intellectual level, but just that feeling, the gut punch of putting into words that in the opinion that not only was this disappearing for people, but the larger implications were in the writing of the majority opinion that in fact any issues of any type of person that were not brought up at the writing of the Constitution aren't eligible for governance and aren't eligible as concerns. And the implications of that, of course, are that any type of person who wasn't represented by those those very specific people who were in power at the time are literally being viewed by the court as second-class citizens, and the court is sanctioning that.
It's a sign that, to me, the fundamentalists in this country have a vice-like grip on so many reasonable people, and that is a reflection on how media and resources really are divvied up in this country. It's kind of, I think, I'm not going to try and say too much, but the idea, I think, of people at the top, people like Rupert Murdoch, for example, is keep them. If you have people hungry, it's easy to give them an enemy, and I think that that's a lot of what fundamentalist and conservative people in power right now, who are seriously radical, are doing to make their point seem more reasonable and more appealing, to the more reasonable people. It's really wild to me. I saw more than one person who is in Congress on video, like this week, say the separation of church and state is not what the founding fathers wanted. That's not in the Constitution. That's what these people in Congress, in the Senate, actually believe. They want a union of church and state. And I think that Roe versus Wade is the biggest sign that we have received so far, that that's what they're trying to return to, a country that'll persecute anyone who's not a Christian, whose values mirror their own.
It's one of those things where it is taking away something that people have had. Like, it's taking away choice, it's taking away, I may not want kids, but I don't want to take anybody else's choice away from them. Like, I may not want an abortion, I may want I don't know. But it's not right for somebody else to tell me what to do, or for me to tell anybody else what to do. So it's an absolutely terrible situation, and I think it's dumb.
It's an issue across the gender spectrum, really. I think that one of the really important things to come out of this discussion around this is to really frame these issues as just general rights that people have in their bodies, whether those are bodies that can carry children or could carry children at some point, or have the mechanism for carrying children, and that it doesn't really matter that we, kind of assign people a role in that and who they are, that we really need to focus on absolute equality, absolute privacy of medical information, absolute choice for who you are in your body. If you don't have your own will in your own body, no matter who you are, no matter what that body is, no matter how you project yourself in the world, then what do you have? That should be an ultimate right that is granted to everyone, regardless of where their gender falls.
Well, I mean, simply by the ruling. It's for them to make the ruling and just to sit there and say we're going to cut the abortion ties, and regardless of how you feel, regardless of your living circumstances, regardless if you feel as though you're equipped or not, you just going to have a baby. Well, it's just like, why? Well, are you going to help me take care of it? Are you going to have more access to houses or homes or doctors? And because, with us having more babies, we need somewhere to live. We need more food. We need more shelter. Are you going to provide more housing programs for us to, to be able to have, the great living conditions, what I'm saying, for the baby? Like, if you're going to sit in and say you're going to have these babies, make sure you guys have the funding. Make sure you guys have the right shelter. Make sure you guys have the equal amount of type of care that we would need so the baby can have a sustained living. And both, for the parents too. If you really want to have it, make sure it's equal. Let's make sure it's right. Let's make sure if y'all going to sit there and make these rules, make sure that y'all have the backup things that we would need to sustain and be, successful.
Cool.
If you know what I'm saying, if you going to make that, rule.
Yeah.
What you gonna do to support the rule? Just don't make the rule and then still have us be living in messed up situations. This don't make sense.
Then you get into gender. Like, what happens if somebody is trans and they're pregnant, but that doesn't necessarily, it's not just a women's issue, it's not just a men's issue. Then you also have the, men having children. Like, why is it all upon the woman to not be able to choose whether or not to have a child? What about the men? Like, why can't they be responsible, or why can't they also have their choices limited because of a child? So there's a lot of different variables and issues at stake. It's not just a woman's issue. It's not just a man's issue. It's not just, it doesn't matter who you are, what you are. This is an issue for humanity. Like, if you can take away one person's right to do whatever they need to for their own body, then what else can you take away from anybody else?
Yeah, that is really the smack in the face. It's a smack down from the justice court against women. It's pulling the rug out from underneath of anyone who is able to be pregnant, to give birth, saying that you are not capable of making a decision. You do not deserve the right to have, the state is going to decide whether or not you have this power over your body. It is absolutely a move backward from equality in every sense. It like the fact that men can't get pregnant does not mean that I'm having trouble articulating this, but I think anybody hearing the beginning of that sentence knows where I'm going. Like, you cannot take a right away from someone just because another person doesn't have that physiological capacity. You know what I mean? Men have the right to govern their bodies in that sense. And just because women can do something that men can't do doesn't mean they shouldn't have the right to govern their bodies in that sense. It's a weird thing to look at and say this is equal, which women should just be able to govern themselves in that capacity, since men can't do that thing. Like, men shouldn't have any power over that. That is what equal is. Men not having a say is equal, because men can't get pregnant.
It's about power, right? White males wanting power. That's what it boils down to. The religious aspect over it boils down to a white male being the hierarchy and wanting power. I mean, that's where the context comes from. So, if you quote in the Bible and you're quoting, the male dominance of society, then that's what it's about. It's about white males having power. Simple as that.
Dog in my head, he's chasing his tail just like my dreams, only just out of range. I got a little dog in my head, he's biting back when you get too close. Don't get too close. Before I get